Good morning, everyone, right? This is a special conversation. And so I want to introduce to our guest speaker, right? He is a Professor Ezekiel. And I have a file that I would like to share about Ezekiel biography. Right here. Excellent. So here is a file that I am sharing about Professor Ezekiel. So first of all, Professor Ezekiel Stear, welcome to our class, right? It's a pleasure that you accepted to visit our class and especially to talk about your book, Nahua Horizons, right? Writing, Persuasion, and Futurities in Colonial Mexico, right? And my students are reading, and we have spent this semester reading, especially in November and Paris, and especially in September and in October, right? Where that we spend time reading your chapters, right? So welcome to our course, Rally 132, Religion and Global Justice. And my name is Abelardo de la Cruz, and I am in the Department of Religious Studies at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And just to mention, this conversation is sponsored by the Institute for the Study of the Americas at the UNC Chapel Hill. Okay, who is Ezekiel? So Ezekiel Stear is Associate Professor at the Department of World Languages, Literatures, and Culture at Auburn University. Ezekiel holds a PhD at the University of Kansas. So the research interest by Ezekiel, so his research interests are indigenous textual production in colonial Mexico and Peru, processes of accommodation, negotiation, and resistance with attention to the Nahuas and Andean peoples, right? And two publications that I want to highlight here. The first one, it was Voices of the Altepetl, Nahua Epistemologies and Resistance in Los Anales de Juan Bautista, right? In the book Coloniality, Religion, and the Law in the Early Iberian World, right? Published in 2013. And the next is Between the Glosses, Devils, and Pantheism in the Crónica Mexicayotl, published in the journal The Latina Americanis, right? In 2017 is what I have here, right? And well, so welcome, Professor Ezekiel, and it's a pleasure that you talk and give us some insight, much more about your book, The Nahua Horizons, right? Published by the University of Arizona Press, Tucson in 2025. So Tlaxcamati miak to compa Ezekiel, welcome, and let's listen your presentation and conversation. And my students have many questions about your work and especially your book. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me, Abelardo. I've been looking forward to this conversation a lot, and I'm looking forward to the student questions at the end. So should I share my PowerPoint now?
Great.
Here we go. Okay. So we got a great little introduction here. I will go ahead and go into this here thing. Okay, so I will give you just a little bit of background about myself and how I became interested in all these fascinating topics. As I've mentioned a couple of times to Professor Abelardo, I was a religious studies major as an undergraduate. And so it's a great honor to be able to kind of close a circle. I come from Southern California, and the first time I was able to really get a chance to be around all of these fascinating topics was when I studied abroad at the UNAM in Mexico City. So here's a picture of the Biblioteca Central, kind of famous landmark. And while I was there, they gave us a tour of the city and they took us to a very important place. I didn't understand how important it was at the time. They took us to Tlatelolco. They were telling us about the Nahuas and all the texts that they wrote there. And for a while, I was sitting there and I was thinking about it. And then life moved on. I went and I became an elementary school teacher for a few years. But then later on, I decided to go back to grad school and become a Spanish professor. And I've been able to combine my interests, excuse me, in religious studies and philosophy and my interest in anthropology with this close reading and interest in literature that we also have. So my PhD is in Spanish, but my thesis and my book, of course, as you can see, has a lot of overlap with the things that you're studying. And I owe a lot of that to the formation I got in religious studies. So just a quick overview of the book's main arguments here. We have the Nahua tools of persuasion, because when you're approaching an uncertain future, you have to convince others to act. And this is what leaders did in these communities. As we've seen from the text that you're looking at, the leadership was wondering what to do now that it's apparent that the Spanish are here to stay. So how are we to engage this? That's sometimes a very hostile and violent force. Other times there's a lot of curious exchanges and interplay, especially when it comes to religion. How are we to proceed into this unknown? And so I identified 5 main characteristics: the gathering of strength, which culminates, of course, in this idea of Chicoalistli that I am always trying to learn more about. I know it's very deep, very complex, but the idea that there is cosmic strength that exists, and if one can live in harmony with the universe, then you can participate in that strength and do what is best for others. Reciprocity, establishing a relationship that will ideally do good for both parties involved. We see repetition as well as a means to convince people that something is important. And we have questioning as persuasion. We see that a lot. You might remember in that chapter on the Anales de Juan Bautista, they're always asking questions everybody knows the answer to. And in that case, they were denouncing the hypocrisy and the corruption that they saw in the Spanish. And then we have specific features of Nahuatl, which I go into in a little depth in the book. There's always a lot further to go with that. But that's an overview of the main argument. In the chapters, I'm so looking forward to everyone's comments on this. But these are kind of the main topics that we're dealing with. In the first chapter, we have problems of perpetuity in the Leonzo de Coacocholan and the Tira de Tepechpan. This is about territory and agriculture. Will we have access to the same lands that we did before? Will we have the autonomy to grow the food that we need to grow? Will we be able to do that in a way that resonates with beliefs about the universe? In the Florentine Codex, you have that also very present in the office of the healer, of the Tisik, and their desire to continue that office into the future, continue that specialization, that healing specialization. And in chapter 3, we have a very dynamic, action-packed Anales de Juan Bautista. For me, when I read that text, there are many moments that are cinematic. And I can just imagine the drastic changes they're going through, it must have been a very scary time at sometimes to be alive, but also probably a very interesting time as they were realizing that working together, we can still learn about the Spanish and learn how to move within this system. And then we have chapter 4 with the didactic horizons in the Crónica Mexicaiotl, when Chimalpain meets with Fernando Alvarado de Tesosomoc to discover some way in which they can continue knowledge moving forward in spite of the Spanish regime. Now, I wanted to spend a little time today revisiting chapter 1 with the Lienzo de Cuauhtémoc, and I wanted to maybe extend the reflections a little bit with some photos that I was able to take on the ground in Cuauhtémoc. So this is the digital restoration, which the Universidad Francisco Marroquín did in Guatemala. Here is a picture of the original when it was at the Museo Regional de Cholula. And if I were standing next to it, I'm not of great stature, but I'm about 5'8", and my head came up to about the bottom of the two birds, the crest right there. So it's pretty large. It's amazing. And to think that they used this in rituals, recounting how they made a strategic alliance with the Spaniards and how they assembled energy through gift giving and through other rituals that prepared them for battle. So we'll dive straight in. One of the main arguments you may remember is certainly we have this alliance scene, which is very important. And we have repetitions of the alliance scene throughout the lienzo. So here, through the giving of gifts and through an embrace and key representatives of the two sides, we have who is probably the Tlatoani, the chief speaker of Cuauhtémoc, embracing here the scholar who's done the most research on this, Flora Nasselberg, she says that this is Hernán Cortés, and it was the first alliance that they made in the 1520s. So the contribution I made was to point out that if you go back and you read all the chronicles of the Alvarado brothers, there is no evidence that a friar went with them. There is no evidence that they tried to proselytize during this expedition. Yet they carried the cross, and the lienzo and the painters of the lienzo also give it a prominent place. So this leads me to argue that they're treating it as a deity in itself. And we see it repeat throughout the lienzo, especially in battle scenes. Now, the curious thing, when I was just starting on this and getting into the lienzo, is that Cuauhtémoc stands to gain a lot through this alliance because they're going into territories. When they depart to the south, they're going south into territories that even the mighty Mexica had not been able to conquer. They're going to go to the edge of what the Mexica had conquered, and they're going to go beyond it, which of course is a great demonstration of their strength as warriors and their ability to spread their economic influence into Central America. And we see again this this cross or this deity that they're carrying, and it has the same place as other accoutrements which represent their neighborhoods or their calpoli. And so we see back here the eagle jaguar, which is shorthand for the warrior, like the typical warrior. Now, we might remember that these individual figures, they don't represent individuals, they actually represent thousands of warriors. Large force march south. So they eventually cross into Guatemala. Here they are at the border of Guatemala in a place that the Quechua called Retalaleu, and it's in Soconosco in Chiapas. So it's pretty close to the modern day border when you go into Guatemala. I pointed out in my analysis that images repeat from the starting alliance. They have an arrow shooting through this tree, and the tree itself recalls the eagles and the water that surrounds the Altepec. And here they are. And I note on Jorge de Alvarado's face, I note a slight expression of uncertainty. He doesn't know where he's going. Who knows the way ahead? Well, the Cuauhtémoc do. They're the only ones who know. The expedition depends on them. They are opening up the future way. And we see in various battle scenes, we see that same cross deity that goes into battle or presides over victory, repeated at several moments. Now, also remember from the first chapter, and I'm keeping an eye on my time here, that in Tepechpan, we see many traditional rituals represented in this tira. Because remember, they started to paint the tira before anyone had ever even seen a Spaniard, before they ever laid eyes on a Spaniard. Then the Spanish came and they kept up their same record. So the record is longer than 300 years. And 300 is pretty significant because 300 years is the length of time that Spain would control that area. 300 years is longer than the United States has existed. So we're talking about a very long time that they were keeping this in mind. And they were planning strategically for the future at every step. Here we see recollections of the foundations of the community. They're linked with an ancient Toltec tradition, right? That shows that they are that they have the nobility to found this community. We also pointed out in the book that their community was successful enough to attract migrants, Mexica migrants. They came from Mexico City to settle in Tepechpan, which is on the northern shore of Lake Texcoco. And they verify or confirm their allegiance to the Altepec by participating in a sacrificial ritual. Now, it's not human sacrifice, as you remember. They sacrifice what appears to be a bird, a butterfly, and a snake here. And there are records of them doing a daily sacrifice along those lines. In any case, we see, as we pointed out, that even before the Spanish come, there is planning for the future. There are futurities, and folks are looking to position themselves in such a way that they will be harmonious with the universe and planning for a prosperous future. When the Spaniards come, they begin to incorporate the symbols that they bring into their own community. As we see, they adopt the curul chair, and the Tlatoani, the community leader, now sits in it. And here is the Habsburg crest, which they adopt as well. And again, it's rather strange to look at that at first blush. Doesn't this seem oppressive? Well, remember that the Spanish did not commission this record. They were keeping it for themselves, and they decided that it was advantageous to make an alliance with the Spanish because it was, at least for the short term, a better system than what they had under the Mexica. So we see that it ends here. The tira ends. It probably went further, but that part is lost. We see the tragedies of the epidemics, but we also see some successes in lawsuits that they had against the Spanish to maintain access to their lands for farming and also for ranching. So one of the main arguments, one of the surprises I had comes from the study by the anthropologist Ryan Cruz, who uncovered a lot of evidence that many times community leaders would decide to get ahead of the Spanish by building churches themselves before they even asked for a church. And we saw that that was the case both in Tepexpan and in Huacachula. I was able to go to Huacachula in 2021 and take some photos on the ground, a walk around. I walked the probable route that the Spanish took when they came into the town, and I walked south of the town, trying to imagine what it would be like to depart and walk towards Guatemala. There was some damage because of earthquakes around the year 2020. We were still in COVID at this time too. So I had some pictures from the side here. This complex ended up being a very important center, not just for Catholicism, but also for trade, also for water, because they brought the water in subterranean canals from the foot of Popocatépetl, which means that everyone was meeting here. Everyone was talking. Everyone was making deals. People were getting married. Again, always thinking about that future horizon, the futurities. Here in the plaza, there's an atrial cross, which oftentimes the friars would use to explain Christian beliefs to people that they were proselytizing. And I wanted to bring in other documents just for today to mention that the importance of that church continues over time. Here we have the Mapa Circular de Coacacholan, which was a document that they used to show that they were paying their proper tribute to the Spanish. So they used it as a tribute record to show all of our households are paying what they should pay. The center of this map is San Martín del Caballero, which reinforces Ryan Cruz's idea that they built this and they're saying to the Spanish, look, you don't need to meddle with us. You don't need to get involved with us because we are already Christianized. And they did that themselves, even when they didn't have the guarantee that there would be clergy to come to it. They built it anyway, just to say, look, we're taking care of business. You don't have to do it for us. And a couple of more right here. One more. I found this in the Archivo General de la Nación in Mexico City. It's a map from 1571, so a little after that previous map, showing still the importance of, here it says Guaquichula, but there it is, San Martín Caballero at the bottom, and that it's part of a circuit where people would walk between these churches. And of course, all we can do is guess and surmise, but we do know that on the ground, they certainly had a variety of beliefs about the value of those places. And we can't deny either that those places were important in an economic sense as well as a ritual sense. So that is the bulk of what I had planned to share, I do want to mention that this spring, for my graduate students, we're going to do a seminar. We will use my book as one of the sources, but another one that we're going to use is by Ben Leeming, Aztec Antichrist, which has another view of the future, apocalyptic, yes, Catholic in ways, but also very indigenous in other ways. And so that should be interesting to see. And we're also going to look at Carlos Jaregui's new book on Bartolomé de las Casas, because he dives deep into the early years of Bartolomé de las Casas conversion and how it was not an overnight sort of thing. He didn't become the model advocate for rights overnight. Probably took more like 7 to 10 years for that effect to happen. In any case, so if we're ready, we can go into questions, or okay.
Bueno, Tlaxcamati Miak, to compa Ezequiel, thank you for the great overview and great conversation about the first chapter of your book, right? And yeah, so you was talking about the 4 chapters, right, about your book um, and several topics that you have in your book, right? And my students have read chapter by chapter of your book, and for today they read the epilogue, right? Like the last chapter that you come back, you are recapitulating about your all the chapters, right?
Yes.
And I think it's good. And also in the class, they spend time, or we spend time, reading a lot about the 16th century and 17th century, right? The contract between the Catholicism or Christianity with uh, indigenous beliefs, right? Um, and so they know a lot about what you was mentioning, right? El Colegio de Tlatelolco, the Chronics, right, by Chimalpain and Tesosomoc and the brothers Ixtlil Xochitl from Texcoco, right? So they have spent time reading some excerpts about the Chronics, right? um, and
That's
and
wonderful.
also and also to compare Ezequiel, right now for this month of November, my students are reading some contemporary texts, right? Some plays and also the survivance of religion, of indigenous religion in the 20th century, right? Central Mexico and also other places of Mexico. And I think it's good in this epilogue how you are also writing about one of my colleagues, Sabina de la Cruz, and indigenous medicine, indigenous healing, right? And so it's really good book, right? I have also spent time reading your book along with my students, right? Um, and yeah, so my students prepared some general questions and at the same time some specific questions, right? But
Great.
definitely we have enjoyed your book. I also know that for for some of my students is basically the first exposure to central Mexico and also indigenous beliefs at the same time, right?
Yes. Yes. And it's a whole world. And I'm grateful to you for sharing that, because it's so important and people need to know. We need to know that before Harvard and Princeton were even a thought, right? There was El Colegio de la Santa Cruz de Tlatelolco. Amazing.
So here we have the questions that I was able to receive, right? And I put all of these questions in a Word document, right? I think let's spend time reviewing a couple questions, right? If we have time, or all the questions that we have time to talk, right? Preston, if you like to share your question.
So my question was about kind of working with the Nahua people and what prompted you to want to kind of get involved with those types of people, and as well as kind of the concept of futuricities. If you can kind of talk about that.
Sure. Well, I had noticed in my readings during the doctoral program, the paradigm that people have used for a long time, since probably the 70s, has been the paradigm of continuity, which is how do we preserve our traditions? How do we preserve our worldview? And I thought that a neglected aspect of that was what did people do to plan for times ahead? And I thought this is a great opportunity. When I took my Nahuatl class, the Nahua scholar, not indigenous, his name is John Sullivan, one of the top experts. He said that every ritual is teleological. And so that stuck with me as in it's trying to accomplish something in the future. And I thought, well, if this is true, then we've been missing the mark about Nahua culture for a while, or at least not understanding a big aspect of it. And so during my writing with the University of Arizona Press, during the dialogue I had with the reviewers, it's all anonymous, but the reviewers bring up to me this whole idea that, well, teleology is very Western. And I started to kind of chew on it and think, yeah, it's true. With a telos or telos, you have an objective. But once I became aware of the concept of futurities through the scholarship of Laura Harjo, once I became aware of that, then it opened up a whole world, because a futurity includes not just your goals, but it includes the future conditions that you anticipate. It includes the conditions that you're anticipating, and that was what I needed to kind of to round this out. And her concept, Laura Harjo's concept, comes from the Muskogee. And so, interestingly enough, the Muskogee are from the U.S. South. I never imagined that I would be here at Auburn, but here I am, and this is Muskogee land. And so she brought to my attention this concept that's been very useful. And to my knowledge, I'm the first one to apply it to Mesoamerica. But it has been useful, I think, and my real hope is that indigenous scholars and communities will find it useful.
Thank you very much. That was really helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Preston, for your question, right? I think Preston has been very interested, right, on your book, right, with a very good summaries as well. Ashmith, are you here, Ashmith?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, now that I look at it, my question's a little poorly worded, but I'm basically just gonna ask, like, has there ever been a time where maybe like researching a specific topic for your book, and then like maybe a discovery came out that caused you to like rethink what you were working on, or maybe like contradicted anything that you've done?
Well, definitely, yeah, because the dialogue is always continuing. When I was working on the sections from the Florentine Codex, since the Florentine Codex is so complex and it has so much in it, and the positionality of the writers is very complex, as well as they are neophytes. They are Catholic. They have that identity. They also have a deep Nahua identity at the same time, and that comes through in the writing. So I have to take that into consideration. While I was drafting chapter 2 and going back and forth on that, Kelly McDonald's Indigenous Science and Technology. Where is it? Right here. Voila. this book came out. And she has so many amazing insights. So I had to kind of stop, read everything she said, and then rechart my own course. But that was very helpful.
Yeah, something interesting about what you have said, Ezekiel, is that I met Kelly MacDonald right in 2005 at my parents' home in Chicontepec when she was a grad student, right? And so we have been able to collaborate and work together. And also what I notice currently is that how we are collaborating indigenous people and non-indigenous people, like, or scholars, indigenous scholars and non-indigenous scholars, in order to publish our work, right? It's something I think new, because it was not the same some centuries ago, right?
Oh, yes. The only comparable thing was probably Tlatelolco.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on with Ivana. Ivana, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, go ahead, Ivana.
Hi. So, you talked in your book a lot about like the significance of Nahua people not only just like preserving their cultural traditions, but also like imagining the future. And I was wondering what you hoped readers would take away from the Nahua focus on futurities in our world today and how that like kind of relates.
Well, I think we could summarize it in one word, hope, because there's always negativity in the world. And the thing that I hoped would be broadly applicable, whether it's an indigenous community or you're non-indigenous, or whether people are even interested in particular in central Mexico, what I hope that people can take away is that these communities that could have given up decided not to. And so even if the odds seem against you right now, or it seems that institutions are leaning in an unfavorable way, or that you have these obstacles in front of you, that by carefully evaluating what's available, there are ways to chart a path forward. And so that's how I would summarize it. I love the part in the epilogue where Sabina says, I'm probably going to get this a little wrong, but she says something to the effect of, you always have to keep healing yourself because those who hate will not stop. And I found that really just powerful on a personal level. So I was hoping to write something like that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Maybe
you,
it's too
Ivana.
broad. I don't know.
Yes, yes. Very good conversation. Mary, are you here, Mary?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead, Mary.
So my question was kind of similar to the other one about the idea of futurity and if you think it still connects to Indigenous voices today.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And in the epilogue, we have the plans of Eduardo to start an educational center with access to technology in Chicontepec, and also to support traditional agriculture. He is using the resources available to plan a future for his people. And the same is true of Sabina. And I also see this in an article that I'm working on right now. It's about to come out this month in the Journal of Transnational American Studies. It's about Nahua language learning and activism online during COVID in Mexico City and Los Angeles. And there I see some indigenous voices, folks who are rediscovering their indigenous roots. Maybe they weren't born in Mexico, but through their language study, they're approaching their ancestral communities in Jalisco or Guerrero, and they're trying to reconnect and they're imagining a future that's different, or a future that is at least multilingual, where they can learn Nahuatl and make that a part of their lives. So I absolutely see it as, yeah, something that's very inspiring, hopefully, right? Because there's always a reason to despair, but if we can look beyond that, that would be great.
Thank you, Ezekiel and Mary, for that question and the response. Brooklyn, are you here, Brooklyn?
Yes.
Go ahead.
My question was just like how you balance your own like academic viewpoint of like the Western point of view when you were reading the text, the like cultural and linguistic context, like when you came up with the idea of the Nahua futurities.
Yeah,
Good question.
that's a very good question, and it's kind of funny because like no matter what we do, we always end up bringing some of ourselves. So whenever possible, I try to center on what the texts actually say and what the goals they express in the most explicit manner possible. As I mentioned before, I started off with the concept of teleology, which ended up being not the right approach. It ended up not being complete. So that was a great example of how a Western concept was not going to achieve what we needed to. So, but then through that help from Laura Harjo, I was able to see there's a more expansive way. Also, in the beginning of my writing, I was focusing a lot on rhetorical figures that might come from a Western tradition or like a Renaissance tradition or Aristotelian tradition. And they convinced me, the reviewers convinced me that I should move that over into the idea of persuasion and look for ways that are culturally specific of the persuasion. And so through language study, and I still have a very long way to go, but through language study and reading, I'm able to approach some of those persuasive techniques that are in the language itself, like the difracismos and other features like omnipredicativity and one called hypertrophism, where writers will make terms that are very long in order to address a specific situation. And there in the Crónica Mexicayot, I was able to see that a little bit with some work. But I appreciate the question, and that is the constant bane. So we probably need lots of dialogue, and then probably also a good dose of self-doubt.
Great, Ezekiel. So yeah, so my students are learning a lot, right, about the history of the Mexicas, right, and the Triple Alliance, right. So when we have the time to read the chapter 4 about the chronics, right, Chimalpain and Tezozomoc, I think many things we remember it, right, about our previous reading. So I think it's very, very connected with pre-Hispanic, colonial Mexico, and contemporary Nahua people who are alive, right? And yes, in some cases, in several times, you are saying like Nahua people not death, right? So they are alive, right? It's
Yeah.
something that I always like to mention to my students, like not only Nahua people, but many indigenous people survive the colonial times in Mexico, right?
Yes.
I think let's pass the voice to Catherine. Catherine, I think you have 3 questions. What you want? I think if you have
Oh,
a question, should be great.
I'll pick the third one. Is there or was there any particular encounter or text that really has just stuck with you as like the most meaningful as you were like researching for your book?
Well, there were 2 moments. The first was I read the Mexican scholar. His name is Alfredo Lopez Austin. he reconstructed the interviews that the Nahua scholars likely conducted regarding healing practices. And it is an inference, but it is very believable because it repeats so many times in the same structure. So there must have been similar questions. And so he reconstructs those. But then it hit me all of a sudden that they did that, yes, in Tlatelolco, but they also asked similar questions in Tepeapulco and in downtown Tenochtitlan. The majority of the healing information does come from Tlatelolco, but they asked those questions too in the other two locations. So I got a picture of how rigorous that project was. I mean, oftentimes anthropologists today will not repeat their research 3 times to make sure that it comes out the same every time. You know, usually if we have one interview, we might say, well, this is the interview we got. We're just going to go with it and just proceed. But they said, no, it needs to come out the same all 3 times. So that impressed me. And then another thing that stayed with me was when I had the honor of visiting Eduardo de la Cruz in Zacatecas. And I had not said a word to him about horizons. I had not said the word horizons. And then in the epilogue, he said, well, people forget their roots and they look for other horizons. And in that second, it was like, woo! It was a very intense moment because it hit me, and I thought, well, then I'm hopefully onto something, because he sees that as a problem, right? If we neglect the past, then like, what's that future going to look like? It's just dislocated. There's no directionality. So I that was really powerful, both of those.
Very good. Thank you, Catherine and Ezekiel. McCain Davidson?
Yes, my question was basically like, when reading your book about and learning how all the Nahua and indigenous religions, like, they really were intentional about thinking about the futurities, I started like thinking about our own American society and how I don't really feel like that is reflected here. And quite frankly, a lot of the problems we have in our society might be because we don't think like that. So I was wondering, as a professional who's experienced both, if you see any like reflection of Nahua values in America at all.
Well, from what I understand, and Abelardo can speak to this, certainly, it seems that reciprocity is just basic. And often we have this expression in English, pay it forward. And it seems like Nahuas are constantly looking for a way to do that. Like, I will feed my children today because when I'm old, they're going to feed me. So I'm already paying them back. And you see that reciprocity, and then with the divine, with deities, or with ancestors. Ancestors, they gave us love, so now we need to return that love and that respect, and understand even that realization from that community in Guerrero, that you come from the dirt and you're going to feed the dirt. So your own body is a reciprocal act when it goes back into the ground. And so reciprocity, that's very tough. And unfortunately, now we have a lot of, I don't want to get too controversial about anything, but there are a lot of high emotions. And so we risk losing that ability to be level-headed and think not just, what do I get or what does my group get, but what does everyone get, right? How can we make this mutually beneficial? And so that would be the core that I see. And I think in our own lives, we have the ability to look for that and to try to instantiate it. certainly in the family, however one's family may be arranged, that's certainly a place where it starts. And to me, it seems, and I could be again wrong, but it seems to me like the idea of the family, and not just the nuclear family, but what we Westerners call the extended family, is the basic unit of practicing reciprocity well. And I was looking around my office a second ago, and I wish I had this right where I need it, but I have a small book of the stories from Chicontepec and Chicomechochic. And if you're ever interested and you wanted to dive in, I think that would show you a lot about what they mean by reciprocity. Chicomechochic is the model. He his entire life gives food. He is the life cycle of corn. He is corn. And he lives so that others can live. And you really can't kill him because he is nothing but life itself. and there are all these characters, these malignant forces that want to kill corn, and they can't. But corn is a fascinating thing because it doesn't grow in the wild. It depends on human beings. So it's a reciprocal relationship. We feed corn and corn feeds us. And me, even as a Westerner, when I go to some countries like in Europe or someplace outside of the Americas, I go to the grocery store and there's no corn. and I do miss it. And I'm like, well, gosh, that has had a tremendous impact on the world, you know?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. This question by McCain, right? And probably another value that I have witnessed in communities, societies, right, is the concept of respect, right? We need to be respectful with everyone, and also we need to demonstrate respectful to many things in our world, to the natural. And two examples, I have seen how people manifest they are respectful to the water. When they're drinking water, glue, 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 they say, or they demonstrate an action that thank you to our provider for giving us the water, and also the fire, right? When they're cooking something, and when they have finished cooking and consume the food, they say thanks to the fire for being with people, for being with human beings, right? So it's respectful, I think, another concept, right? Be Kira.
Hi. Okay, this is kind of broad, and I feel like it was kind of answered with like the hope earlier, but I asked, why is it important to see Nahua writers as imagining the future, not just preserving the past?
It boils down to agency, because we have these terrible habits of using words like syncretism to explain everything. And even as a Westerner, I know that like logically this doesn't work. People were making actual decisions on the ground. We can't just remove the agentive aspect. Recently at a conference at Ethnohistory, I heard a term, agentive hybridization. And I thought, okay, that's a kind of an awkward term, but it's approaching more, I think, what we're going for, which is not to remove the agency and the decisions of people on the ground by glossing over it with words like syncretism and mestizaje. I don't know if that helps, because if you imagine a future and you imagine a specific future, in order to do that, you are exercising your agency. And it's not just something that happened to you, like we have that other expression in English. It didn't happen to you, it happened for you, that sort of idea. And so you can engage it and take a proactive stance moving forward. And what's been amazing about this study is that in some cases, we can actually find the names of individuals who were making plans, which is, that's fantastic. And that really blows well, it shows the weakness of syncretism as an approach, as a blanket approach.
Okay, so let's continue with Elizabeth.
Hi, yeah. The first part of my question was already answered, but do you think that you will create more works that expand on your previous research? And kind of what future projects do you have in the works?
Well, I am thinking a lot about Chimalpain because he's so prolific. So it's going to take me a while, but I would like to look more closely at his writing and understanding his networks. Susan Schroeder translated all that material, and she made such a great contribution. And it was so much material that we'll be busy for many years, just being able to access the text more because of her translations and transcriptions. He wrote 1,600 folios, the single most prolific indigenous writer in the Americas. So I think if I was going to try to understand how Mexico became Mexico and why it matters, why the Nahuas matter, I think my next step would be to dive into Chimalpain.
That's great, Elizabeth and Ezekiel. Jamie?
I guess just to summarize all of my
Yes.
questions, so throughout your research journey, you had a lot of interactions with Nahua scholars and the history and their culture. I'm just curious if you have like a favorite experience or anything that has stuck with you the most.
Well, the time that I was able to spend with Eduardo as a tutor, when he tutored me, and then also he was kind enough to have me at Zacatecas. That was something that really stuck with me. And when I first took my Nahuatl class, Sabina was my tutor as well, and those were amazing moments that really stuck with me. Yeah, I'd say those were right up there. Very amazing.
Thank you. Madeline, your question.
Yes. I wanted to ask, as I found really interesting, the healing practices and how prevalent that was to Nahua tradition. And so in Western medicine and like as those cultures kind of come in contact with each other, how do you think that current healers navigate the strong Western influence in medicine that exists today?
As from what I understand, oftentimes folks use the traditional medicine and Western medicine in combination, depending on what the condition is. But then there are other there are things that only the traditional medicine can heal, like the situations I described in the epilogue. And so in that case, the healer, the Tepatiquet, still has a very important role. And there is knowledge that they have and that they are going to teach to future practitioners, but they don't want just the world to know. This is very special knowledge they have to protect for obvious reasons. After 500 years, we should be very wary about sharing any knowledge that doesn't need to be shared. And I think that's it. There are some conditions that they know Western medicine can't heal. This has a sort of an analog, or another side of it is that sometimes nurses and health practitioners in the States, if they've not studied anything having to do with Mesoamerican religion, if they've not taken an anthropology class, if they have no experience whatsoever, they might have a patient who claims to have susto, some kind, and they don't have any means to treat it, because you might prescribe some antidepressant drug. It's not really going to do anything, because it has more to do with the person's relationships with their community members, or relationship to the cosmos, or things that this Western doctor is not qualified to do. And so I think, yeah, the dialogue continues between them, but there are definitely places where Western medicine stops, I would say.
Okay, so thank you, Professor Ezekiel and Madeline, with your last question, right? I think according with our time, we are finishing our session. Dr. Ezekiel, so thank you for your conversation with my students, with our students, right? So this is, of course, a lot of food, right, that you have written and you have provided to us, right? So basically, we would like to say thank you. Muchas gracias, Tlaxcamati Mia, for your conversation and your time, right? I have a petition, everyone. Please turn on your cameras if you would like. I would like to take a picture, everyone, just for a souvenir with our guest speaker. Thank you so much. Please smiling. 1, 2, 3.